People work all their lives in order to achieve the idea of the American dream, and many people are able to attain it, but most people fall short and work hard all their lives only for a meager existence. This is what has plagued our great nation and has created the nationwide issue of income inequality. I will discuss how the government has ignored income inequality and what we can do as a society to respond to this problem. I will explain how trickle-down economics, a theory that has been championed for decades, has contributed to income inequality, why we need campaign finance reform, and what we can do as a society to address this issue. Income inequality is real and affects every single person in this room, and I call on all of you to understand the importance of this issue and to see what we can do together to combat this problem. Supply-side economics was an idea adopted and implemented under Ronald Reagan's administration with the implementation of the Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981. Supply-side economics is the idea that if tax breaks are given to the wealthy and corporations, there would be more money to create more jobs, hire more people, and create more economic opportunities, which would in turn create an increase in labor and the supply of goods and services, which would in turn create demand and stimulate the economy. According to a study by the United States Treasury in 2006, the Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981 combined with the Tax Reform Act of 1986 brought the marginal income tax rate for top earners from 70% down to 34%. What Reagan's administration did not take into account was that giving tax breaks to people who have a larger income were paying a smaller proportion of taxes than the middle class and lower income earners. But Reagan's administration is not the only administration to blame, because every single president from Reagan to present day has in some way continued the use of supply-side economics. Andrea Ford wrote for Time magazine in 2008 that Bill Clinton signed NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which allowed outsourcing jobs to Mexico and Canada in order to increase profits, has contributed to lost jobs. George W. Bush passed the Bush tax cuts, which dramatically slashed taxes for the wealthy, and President Barack Obama extended the Bush tax cuts, which perpetuated income inequality. Now, when we look at this graph, we can see that minimum wage in red was frozen near the early 1980s, and what happened is GDP in blue, which is the wealth of our economy, continued to grow, and then minimum wage stayed constant and fell below, and then creating extreme inflation and making things more expensive for the working American. Now, let's take a look at why there needs to be campaign finance reform and the power of Wall Street and wealthy America. Wall Street, CEOs and wealthy businessmen have been financing political campaigns in order to protect their interests. According to Senator Tom Udall of New Mexico, who wrote a policy review in 2010, the Supreme Court's decision on Citizens United, in quotes, made a bad situation worse. Citizens United was a controversial decision that allows corporations and special interest groups to provide an unlimited amount of money to politicians running for office due to our First Amendment right of freedom of speech. So, what this means is that these corporations have the same voices as individuals, and that corporations, special interest groups, and wealthy America have been able to eliminate unions, elect politicians that have not regulated big businesses for not taking care of their employees, and this decision has silenced the voices of our American citizens. For example, we need to put an end to people like Don Blankenship, who took down the coal mining unions in West Virginia, which has harmed my own family members, and the Koch brothers, who invest millions and millions of dollars to this day into political campaigns. And while working in the U.S. House of Representatives, I learned about the great power these lobbyists hold. These groups are powerful enough to say that if a certain politician does not support their cause, they would not get reelected. And this is the reason why we need to push for campaign finance reform, because elections are based off of money and not the quality of ideas. These are serious issues that need to be addressed, and I'm here to provide you with one of the many solutions to solving this problem. The greatest act of civic engagement and freedom in our country is to be able to vote for leaders we believe will represent best. I propose that if we increase voter turnout and break down barriers that have been set by our representatives on certain groups of individuals in our country, we can put leaders into power that care about the people. Charlotte Alter wrote for Time magazine in 2014 that only 36.4% of eligible voters turned out to vote in this year's midterm elections, which is the lowest voter turnout since World War II. According to the US Census Bureau, out of approximately 133 million votes cast in the 2012 presidential election, about 98 of those were white Americans, and only 18 million African Americans, 11 million Latinos, and only 4 million of the Asian American population turned out to vote. So if you had a voter turnout for those that are not white Americans, it does not even equal half of their voters turnout. The National Poverty Center in 2010 estimated about 12.4% of white Americans, 38.2% of African Americans, 35% of Latinos, and 13.6% of Asian Americans live in poverty. If we do not increase voter turnout, then these individuals living in poverty will not be fairly represented. More money is allocated to schools in affluent communities rather than to schools that are struggling, and therefore children that are growing up in lower income communities will not be given the same opportunities to excel in their community schools because teachers do not perform. School programs are not being funded, extracurricular activities are too expensive, and children are growing up in an environment that exposes them to drugs, gangs, crime, and violence, rather than an environment that allows them to succeed and grow as individuals. This is unacceptable and unjust, and this does not represent what our forefathers envisioned, and we need to make change now. We can stand up to Wall Street and politicians that have continually made it difficult for certain individuals to vote, with them passing voter ID laws and a voter tax that was passed in Texas, and even with the rhetoric of our leaders that have made excuses and have blamed only a few people in power for all the problems we have in our economy. Many of you are probably asking yourselves why this matters, and it may not matter to some of you, but if you look around, we are all affected by income inequality. If you work, you are paying taxes. Your family members, they are paying taxes. Our taxes continue to subsidize the tax cuts for those at the top, and when the wealthiest get a tax cut from their friends in DC, the deficit goes up. And who picks up the tab to shrink the deficit? We do. If any of you are paying student loans, the government is raking in $60 billion of your own debt and using it to pay off the tax cuts we are giving to the wealthy. Some of you may think that your vote does not matter because all politicians are the same or are crooked. But I can tell you today that if all of you voted, Congress would look completely different than it does today. It would represent the people. Our voice is powerful and our vote is powerful, and therefore I call on all of you to stand up to corrupt leaders that have put the interests of most Americans aside and look past empty rhetoric and fire your representatives that have put their wealthy buddies in Wall Street before you. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or Independent, our leaders won't listen to you until you decide to vote them in or vote them out, because voting is accountability and we need accountability. Let's not stand in the shadows and watch our great country regress, but rather light the path to prosperity and rid the shadows that loom over our communities and show the world the resilience of our country to answer the cries of its citizens. Let's make it possible for every single individual to have the same opportunities and chance at reaching the American dream. In conclusion, I have discussed how the government has ignored income inequality and what we can do to combat this problem. I explained how supply-side economics has contributed to income inequality, why there needs to be campaign finance reform, and what we can do as a society to address this issue. Our voice is powerful, so let us not be silent. Our citizens are crying for help and leadership, and if we do not stand up for them, then nobody will. But most importantly, let's stay positive and believe in the power of our democratic society, because we have proven time and time again that we can overcome any challenge or difficulty. Together, let's put an end to income inequality. Thank you.